Hi everybody. So I've had a lot of questions about how much did the tiny house cost and what are wood prices like in Japan, and are you guys seeing the same lumber price increase? And so I'm going to take this video and answer some of those questions. I've got Bee up here. She's really hot. It's still very, very hot, and but she's found a cool spot. She's got a little bit of water over there, so I think she's all good. To lay out the total price of the tiny house build, I want to start with the materials first, and then go through some of the processes and some of the hiccups, and then look at the overall price. Okay? First thing, I want to look at the source of the lumber. I buy direct locally from a sawyer just up the road. I met him completely by accident. One day I was driving around that little town. It's a hamlet more than it is a town, but he has a one-man show up there, a little sawmill in the middle of this town, and stumbled upon him, went and introduced myself, struck up a relationship, and next thing I know, he's delivering me wood. I originally bought a bunch of wood for my deck in town. A couple of years ago I replaced that, and then for some sawhorses, and then finally for the tiny house. And his prices they've been the same since I started to work with him, and they're very good. His output is fantastic. So Suzuki-san, if you're watching, shout out to you. You do great work. So with the source of the wood secure, I started in on the planning, and I didn't draw the design for this tiny house. I relied on Will Beamer's book. And excellent tutorial if you want to start small and learn all the basics for timber frame joinery and assembly. So once I had the design settled on and the size settled on, I went to the sawyer, Suzuki-san, and I presented him with my cut list. I got a quote from him about a week later, said, okay, let's go with it. And he started cutting my wood, preparing it. I gave him a very detailed cut list, which I realized was way too much work. He didn't reflect that in the pricing, but it was a complicated order. When I finally got the wood delivered, I needed a place to work. And here on the mountain, you're seeing me sitting on a level spot. And this is just one of two level spots, and I just made this last week. Right? So there was no good place to do accurate measuring and cutting with big heavy logs. Luckily, it was off-season, it was December, and my friend in town who manages a restaurant and hotel there said, why don't you use my second parking lot up the hill? And nobody's there, you got tons and tons of space, and I did. Thank you, Kevin. So I spent 3 months up there measuring and cutting. Now let's go through what I measured and cut, and the order I did it. So first, you start at the bottom, okay? I started with the sill and the joists, okay? There are 4 sills to make up the rectangle, and there are 5 joists to give it the support for the eventual floor. After that, I went after the posts, okay? These are 6x6s, and there are 6 of them. So I measured and cut the posts. There's a tenon on the bottom, there's a tenon on the top, and there are probably at least 4 mortises per post. So each post has a lot of mortises and a couple of tenons. After the posts, I worked on the plates. The plates are the 2 long beams that sit atop the posts, on top of which your rafters sit. Okay, So those plates, I really enjoyed cutting those. They're a complicated piece of wood to cut because they have the step flap joint, and there are 9 of them on each one. And then there are 3 mortises for the 3 posts on each one in the bottom of it, and 9 step lap mortises along the top. Beautiful. It's a beautiful looking cut. I really enjoyed looking at it after the fact, but it was also a little bit, I had to learn how to do things proper by that time. After the plates, I focused on the rafters. Now the rafters, if you haven't seen these videos, jump back and take a look at them. The rafter tails, the part that overhangs and becomes the eave, they took me forever. The rafters themselves, they sit on top. You've got your 2 plates here, and the rafters sit like this to form the V of the roof. And they are a simple tenon on one side and mortise on the other, and they lock together like that. It's a very simple joint, and you put a peg through them. Very simple joint. But the tails that hang out, it's also a very simple joint, but it just took forever. By the way, if you are just dropping into this video and you don't know very much about Shimoda life, I just spent the last year and a half preparing this rough, raw, steep mountain to live on. I've spent the last 6 months building the tiny house here as training for the real house, which I'll start probably in 4 months. And that's what Shimoda life is. It's trying to make a livable homestead out of this rough mountain. And so if you haven't seen any other videos and you want to know, I'm talking about pricing for the tiny house, there are 15 or 20 videos just on timber framing in Japan. That's the series name for this tiny house build. Please jump back and watch some of them. I enjoyed making them. I had fun, and I think they're a learning experience for anybody who does watch them. So once we've got the rafters done, pretty much all the major components of the tiny house are done, except for 3. Tie beams are horizontal members that tie the 2 walls together. Okay, there's 3 of them, and those are intricate. The diagonal braces, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 14 diagonal braces. And these killed me. And I still don't know how to do them well, even after doing 14. And then finally, the girts. The girts are the horizontal members that run kind of around the midsection of the walls. And that's it. That's it for the major timbers for the tiny house. So before I get to summarizing the cost, what are the other incidental costs in addition to the frame itself? Well, let's see, the big categories are the floor. You need at least 1-inch planks for the floor. The siding, you need plywood first of all, or OSB, which I used. Then you need some kind of external siding. You also need a vapor barrier. But the external siding, I used 1/2-inch cedar, and I burned it. You can see the burning of the cedar. Those are fun videos. Please have a look at those. And then for the roof, you need roofing material, plywood. I used a special plywood in Japan that has one side, essentially a thick enamel paint coating on it. And the construction workers use that particular plywood for concrete work. It's a really slick, smooth yellow covering. Then also you need your roofing material, your asphalt shingle or your tin, whatever you prefer. You also need windows if you're going to have windows in your unit. I had to buy 4 windows, very cheap and effective, good windows. And then finally, well, not finally, actually, almost finally, you need a door. Okay, I put on this big sliding door. I made it a couple of weeks ago and hung it. It's a sliding barn door. I still haven't perfected the locking mechanism for it yet. We'll get to that. And then finally, which I haven't built yet, is the deck. Okay, you've got to have some kind of platform or deck for it. And those are the major components of the tiny house. Now, before you even start building your tiny house, you've got to have some foundation of sorts to put it on. And there are endless options out there. You can use piers, you can use rocks if you want to go real Japanese old school. You can use a pad, which is what I did. I chose to go with a concrete foundation that is actually anchored by 6 sonotubes filled. They're sitting about a meter and a half down. So that's it. I mean, you've got your major timber components. You've got your kind of, I call them accessories to the frame, your lumber requirements and other material requirements. You've got your foundation. That's really what makes up your tiny house. You know, I don't have any water coming to the tiny house. So therefore I don't have any plumbing. I've got an extension cord running here from my power pole, you know, halfway down the hill. So I can wire this up eventually for electricity. Yeah, those are the major cost categories. And so let's look at the summary of it. Okay. Well, that's it. That's the summary. It's not really expensive. Lumber prices are completely fair and unchanging because of the way that I buy them locally, and you know, they don't go through the big lumber manufacturing process, which I think is what is driving the lumber prices. Not only supply chain, but manufacturing processes. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. I would appreciate it if you like this video, if you liked it. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe, because this series is going on to be building a timber frame house up on the hill in a very short time. So please, you know, join in for the journey. It's going to take a while, but I'm sure it'll be interesting along the way. Thanks very much.